Just for Team Shelby of the GT350 Heritage Edition. This is a very special car. This was something that was very near and dear to Jim's heart, and he was the big proponent that made this car happen. So while he's humble about it, let me tell you, everybody who gets one of these cars needs to come and thank Jim personally, because that's why it happened.
Scott doesn't know this, but I just charged his account, so one of you gets it as a random drawing.
Thank you very much. Jim is social distancing, but he has agreed to give us a quick walk around and talk a little bit about his time with Carroll Shelby. Sometime I'll tell you about the flight we took to the Detroit Auto Show. It was him and myself, Carroll, and Wolfgang Puck. That was something I will never forget, and I hate beets, and I will just tell you that.
And so, you ate them.
Thanks to Carroll Shelby.
Yeah.
So, please welcome Jim Owens.
Thank you, Scott. So, for those of you I haven't met before, I'm Jim Owens. I've been doing the performance and racing and working for Carroll since about 1999. Right now I'm on the Mustang team again. Got the opportunity to come and launch the 2020 Shelby GT500. Just before that, for those of you who don't know, I did the Ford GT program as well. So I got an opportunity to work through on our Le Mans winning team again, which was pretty cool. So a little bit about this car. Right, if you think about it, and you've heard the stories, and Gary will help me here, think of January of 1965, Mustang came out. Take a little step back, right? Lee Iacocca and the Fairlane Committee was trying to come up with a vehicle that was open road, enjoyable, that could bring in the folks who were coming back from World War II that had a little bit more disposable income, and one of those things that would literally take the enjoyment back into open road driving. And for some of you who've heard my 50 years presentation before, some of the things that the Mustang could have been called, like one of them was my favorite. We've got a picture of all the badges. I used it at the 50 years at Charlotte with the little panther like in a position like this. You wonder how Mustang would have been different if it would have been the Panther as opposed to the Mustang. If it would have had independent rear suspension, which was in the original program, that was cut out for about $11 per vehicle. What would have happened if we'd started with IRS? Would have it been different instead of the solid rear axle? Anyways, there was not a segment, it was a clean sheet of paper that they developed this Mustang off of, right? Some of you saw Gurney, it wasn't Gurney, it was Gurney who ran the Mach 1 or the Mustang 1 concept at Watkins Glen. I think it was Gurney, ran it up there and ran it as the pace car. What they wanted to do was find a car that could bring in a different generation and a different type of person who enjoyed the open road and Route 66. So they launched the Mustang April 17th, 1964. They expected to sell about 300,000 units. In the first 13 months, it was about 1.1 million Mustangs that they sold. They started ramping up different plants to switch over to Mustang. And about the same time they were doing that, we were going after Le Mans. Carroll was involved in the Le Mans program. You've seen the Ford versus Ferrari movie, was in there. Lee Iacocca went to Carroll and basically said, build me something of a race car out of this. And in the true Carroll Shelby vernacular, he came up with and said, Lee, you can't make a racehorse out of a mule. Basically saying, hey, your Mustang is a mule compared to the racing. From that time till January of 65, Carroll and his merry band of hot rodders and the team, and it's kind of like what Gary Patterson runs today, it's about a bunch of people who work together to develop a vehicle that has performance characteristics that we love. They developed that car from that time till January of 65, and I forget the second week in January. They take 70 some odd number of cars and push it through because you needed 100 cars certified for SCCA production, and they take the first sets and they pull it all the way back around and they run them through again to have 100 of them. That car went on to win, I think 13, Scott will help me here, 13 to 15 first races. In SCCA Production B, won it in 65 and in 66. You talked about it with the Terlingua team, that was 66, wasn't it? The Terlingua car? 67 was Terlingua. So 65 and 66 won SCCA Production B, beating the Corvettes, the Porsches, basically saying, you know, Carroll was able to take that mule and turn it into a race car. That was what gave Mustang its racing bona fides. Right, if you think about the original Mustang GT badge, the red one with the little crown and the thing on the top, that was a touring car. Carroll turned it into a world-class race car with a Wimbledon white and Guardsman blue stripe. So what we decided to do on the GT350 for the 2020 model year, job 2 to job last, is make the Wimbledon white and Guardsman blue available again. Now, there were GT350s that were other colors, but these were the ones that were certified for the racetrack. That whole piece that Carroll did begat that whole muscle car era, if you think about it, right? 2 years later, Camaro comes in. Was it 3 years later, Challenger? 2 or 3 years later, it was Challenger that came in that literally brought on an entire segment. So it was not only the Mustang, Lee Iacocca and the Fairlane Committee bringing that out, it was Carroll and his merry band of hot rodders working with the Ford engineering team to build a race car that actually performed on the street. So what we decided to do, how do I say this? Somebody who works for Carl, and I'll introduce Carl in a second. There's some people who work at Ford who, let me take a step back. You've seen the Dodge commercials where they hire the Screen Actors Guild members to play the Dodge brothers. Have you seen those TV commercials that Dodge does? Well, I happen to work for Henry Ford III, who is the direct DNA from the first race car driver in Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford I, who retired 1-0 as a race car driver, right? So that performance has been there since 1901, before the company started, carries itself all the way through, and there's some of those Ford family members who are Mustang and Shelby enthusiasts just like yourself, right? Bill Ford has just about almost every VIN 1 Mustang we've done that we haven't auctioned off for charity. Elena Ford has a bunch of Mustangs, including one of the GT500s over here, 50-year limited edition. Henry Ford III has a bunch of them. Edsel has a bunch of them on there, although he always likes to buy it on A-plan, and Shelby's aren't available on A-plan, so I get a little bit of ribbing from when Edsel wants to buy the cars and buy them from there. He has to actually go to the dealer to buy it. The reason I bring that up is we wanted to do something special. Bill wanted, he gave away VIN 1 to Edsel. Edsel actioned it off for charity at Barrett Jackson. Was that 14? For the GT350, VIN 1. It was 14. Auctioned it off, sold it for $1.1 million for charity. Bill didn't buy another GT350 other than that. He didn't want VIN 1 of this year. What he wanted was something special in the 20 model year. So between John Wicks, who works for Carl, and myself and some of the other team were like, we should do Wimbledon white and Guardsman blue. So working very quickly with the program team, we came up with that, kind of presented it to them. Hey, and oh, by the way, can we sell them to the people and we'll make yours special? And they bought off on it. So this was a program that took us how long, Carl? A couple of months max? Max, a couple of months to say, we need to do this. And why we wanted to do this was to pay homage to that original 65-day when SCCA Production B signed off on this car in Wimbledon white and Guardsman blue. The packages and I had to do some of it in marketing. It's $1,965 package. Right, so I priced it as $1,965. It doesn't translate to Canada well. They're like, why did you want to charge this price? We did it for $1,965. Now it has a couple of really unique things in it. the Guardsman blue stripes, Mr. Patterson gave us the original striping from the 65 so that we could actually take it to the studio to color match the exact color. So from Shelby American, they brought us the stripe. We went into the color mastering studio, and these people, man, they work in the dark, and there's these like high beam lights going over, and they're saying, oh, this needs much more. I'm like, just match it. They were actually able to match it. Then K Graphics, who does the stripes on the GT350, GT500, and will be doing the stripes on the Mach 1, they mastered the tape stripe. If you hold what Gary gave us up to it, it is the exact match. Now, we tied some things in here. This is one of the pre-production cars. This badge in and of itself matches the absolute Guardsman blue, as well as the badge on the back comes in that Guardsman blue as well. Inside, we didn't change much of the interior aspect of it, but it will have the chassis badge for it that it was specific for the Heritage, for the GT350 Heritage. That's it. Oh, GT350 side stripe, sorry, and this is what I got yelled at. Right, if you remember, now it's not the font from the 1965, it's the font from today, but the GT350 side stripes had it down here on the stripe. Now, it has parallel GT350s on there, because this wasn't on the original ones, but we kept it on there and put it in on the side stripes. We're really proud to be able to do something like this, to pay homage to, you know, not only the founding of the Mustang with the Lee Iacocca and the Fairlane Committee, but to Carroll Shelby and his merry band of hot rodders who back in the 60s turned this mule, quote unquote, into a racehorse. Now, from a mechanical standpoint, and what we've done on the 2020 GT350R and the 2019 GT350, I'd like to introduce the Chief for Ford Performance and the Chief of Mustang from 2016 through 2020, Carl Whitman. Carl?
Hey. So again, we brought the 350 back in 19 after a little bit of hiatus, and it picked up a lot of chassis refinement and tuning that we learned from both the development of the GT500 and then working with our partners both from Bosch on brake controls to MagnaRide. So what those model years pick up is they pick up new sets of electronics, in essence, to really set up the tuning capability of the car. It's probably the biggest thing. We changed the bars around, get a little bit more balanced in the setup. So that was also a big thing, and we tweaked out the tire. So in 19, we switched off the front tires, the rear tires, and that compliance change with the bars, give it a little bit easier to drive on a track, and that was the intent of the 19, is take those learnings and really retune that chassis to set it up so it can carve a little bit easier, more intuitive. Still a fast car on the track, still all the cooling capabilities, still that wonderful naturally aspirated 5.2 liter Voodoo. But it was really around, you'd ever want to leave a car behind in the lineup. So as we learned stuff, we really wanted to bring forward on the 19. And then on the R's, we ended up going to a long trail suspension. It helps with the wheel fight on rut wander. So we brought that over from learnings on 500, and that came in onto the R at that time. So those are the big differences when you get in and drive it. Most people I've talked to who've driven 19s, you notice that difference right away in the setups. And then from the appearance on the spoiler systems, it ends up being a spoiler system that you'll see has really progressed. It started off on 500, it works really well on the 350 when we brought it back in 19, and then you'll see it again on the Mach 1 handling pack. So it really ends up with a good combination of aero drag and downforce with some flexibility to put a gurney flap on it if we want to. So we've kind of propagated that engineering across the lineup of Mustang. So that is the highlights for the 19 and 20 model year for the Shelby. Again, just a light touch on the comments we've gotten, but you really can't do anything to improve the powertrain that we've got. It's just, it still puts a smile on my face every time I get in the Fleet One and start it up.
Carl, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'd like you, I don't think I need to introduce somebody else, but I'd love to bring up Mr. Patterson, who is the Director of Fun and the President of Shelby American. Not unlike the teams back in the 60s, you know, Gary and Vince and his team there are a bunch of performance enthusiasts who happen to develop cool things. Now there's a lot of stuff that Carl would love to do on these vehicles, but as he says, Ford Motor Company will meet all of the laws that are out there. So if maybe you wanted to do something a little bit post-title to have a little bit of fun, post-buying the thing, you know, that's Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard approved to buy new, once you own it, now it's time to take it over to Shelby American. And I'd like to introduce Gary Patterson. Gary?
Thanks, Jim. You know, Jim worked with Shelby for, what, 12 years ago, 13 years ago?
4 years, from 7 to 11.
So he actually worked for us because, you know, he likes to work on the dark side where he pushes just a little further than Carl would want as well. So that's okay.
Well,
but
Carl
now,
wants to.
Now they've reined him back in, so now it's up to me to do those kind of things. They won't, but the nice thing is, way too long on the dyno, it's not making enough power. Anyway, the neat thing is, you know, Carl and his team helped give us some of the answers that otherwise it would take us quite a bit of time to figure out. As well as, hey, you might want to go here, you might want to go there. So some of what we do is all about that. We recently announced the SE package for the GT350, so that is eligible for this as well. So just so you know. And also, supercharger would help that thing launch. Also, a little bit of history. How many of you guys know the 65s, when they came out, all 562 1965s were what color?
White.
White. Any color you wanted, as long as it was white. It wasn't until 66 that you could choose your colors that Jim was talking about. And most people don't realize it because people retro afterward, and it was such an iconic look that they expected it. These over-the-top stripes, less than half were delivered from the factory with over-the-top stripes, even though they all had the side stripes. So just a little tidbits of stuff for you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Yeah,
You guys good? Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks
Gary.
again, guys.
Thanks for coming to this. This is an exclusive. Membership does have its privileges. We appreciate you being here.
Team Shelby,
Anybody want to throw
folks.
axes tonight? Anybody want to catch the axes? Wow, thank you. I'm designated axe catcher.
The X's want to catch
We had a
the
great
axes.
time last night. We're going to have a great time tonight. If we can get everybody to mosey back to the tent, we have
This is Pam
raffles.
from
So
NortheastWheelsEvents.com at the
anybody wants to mosey back,
2020
so
Ford
thank you for being here.
Nationals at Team Shelby special presentation. Check Team Shelby online at the address below. Meanwhile, check out NortheastWheelsEvents.com, SoutheastWheelsEvents.com, UKWheelsEvents.com, and while you're there, post and share your events. I'll see you at the shows.